For more, we have with us Professor Kim Hyun-wook from the Korea National Diplomatic Academy. Thank you for coming on the show as usual, Professor.
Okay, pleasure to be here.
Now, we just heard in that report that the Moon administration is once again sending the National Security Advisor Chung Eui-yong to Pyongyang along with the delegation that went last time as well. Now, one of the agendas will be about setting the date for the Inter-Korean Summit and confirming it as well. But sending a special envoy like this is quite a strong card. Does this suggest that there's still a lot to discuss about the summit? Some things that perhaps couldn't have been sorted out with lower level officials, such as working level talks at Panmunjom or high level talks at Panmunjom?
Yes, I think, the special envoy, the role of the envoy is very big. I think at this juncture, maybe he needs to deliver the President Moon's message directly to, Kim Jongun, and also would like to have some opportunity to talk with Kim Jongun privately. In the meeting, if that is held, I think Kim Jongun would give to Chung Eui-yong his willingness or intentions, and the way he thinks would be the negotiation between North Korea and the United States. Also, he will talk about the future pathway for Kim Jong-un to denuclearize itself and what conditions would make it possible. So these kinds of talks I don't think would be possible in a working level or high level talks. Bureaucrats would talk about it, but this is a very delicate issue. I mean, this is something that needs a more delicate talks, give and takes and negotiations, which I think would be only possible by sending out the special envoy Chung Eui-yong to Kim Jong-un, and they already have met each other before, and I think this kinds of juncture, I think the role is very important. Chung Eui-yong's role is very important.
You mentioned the possible meeting with Kim Jong-un, but at the moment there's no guarantee that Chung Eui-yong will meet with Kim Jong-un again. For example, last time when Pompeo, the U.S. Secretary of State, went to Pyongyang, he thought he was going to meet Kim Jong-un, and that didn't happen either. The Blue House at the moment have not confirmed either way. Do you think they will meet? And even if they don't meet, what message would that North Korea be sending then? Oh,
we cannot be sure whether the meeting with Kim Jong-un would be possible. That all depends upon Kim Jong-un's decisions in denuclearization issues. Now, still, of course, the U.S. position is rather flexible. Recent, remarks by Bigan, special representative for North Korea issues. I think he showed some flexibility in the U.S. position on North Korea. If North Korea promises on giving the timeline for denuclearization to the United States and promises on giving the declaration of nuclear capabilities of North Korea, maybe the U.S. can concede to North Korea the declaration of the end of the Korean War, before it receives all the kinds of denuclearization and gifts and incentives from North Korea, which is a big concession from the United States, I think. So I think still now the U.S. and North Korea is talking behind the scene over the denuclearization issues. I'm not sure how far they have gotten on the agreement yet, but I think they will talk and talk and talk, maybe in the New York channel still they will be talking. And I think Kim Jong-un is waiting and see how the entire scenery is going on, evolving. For example, this kinds of talk with the United States, how is it going on? And also, what will be the Xi Jinping's visit thing is going on? All these kind of things, many factors are waiting for Kim Jong-un's visit. And I think, when Chung Eui-yong visits North Korea, Pyongyang on the 5th, right? At that juncture, how all other factors are working on would affect the meeting with Kim Jong-un at that time.
Okay, so we can't say either way, and we can't read either way, whether if he meets or not, what that could mean into the situation.
We can be sure beforehand at this juncture.
Well, I guess at least one good sign was the fact that South Korea announced that they were sending this presidential envoy delegation on Thursday. We know that because they sent the request, Friday. They sent the request on Friday morning to North Korea, and by the afternoon it had been accepted and announced. This quick agreement for talks can be considered a good sign, no?
Yes, I think it's a good sign. At least this shows that Kim Jongun definitely wants to have in North Korea a big role. I mean, South Korea. I mean, South Korean government has been, playing as an important mediator between North Korea and the United States, and still needs the role of South Korea. Even though North Korea still does not want to begin the initial stage of denuclearization, still South Korea wants to make this frame of negotiation between two countries to evolve smoothly in the future. Secondly, I think North Korea wants to develop this kind of detente between North and South Koreas, on and on, maybe to the level in which maybe the exchanges between two Koreas might possibly violate the international community sanctions. That's some kinds of concerns the U.S. has. It's just a subsidiary issues. I mean, it's not beginning. The two Koreas not beginning the economic exchanges, but even though they talk about some other subsidiary issues like establishing some representative offices, a liaison office in Kaesong or something like that, still, there might need some kinds of economic incentives given to Pyongyang. For example, they might need to bring the diesel oil to Kaesong so that that kind of oil support is something that needs for the operation of the office over there. So all these kind of things are something that the U.S. is worrying about. But I think this is still a significant issues we have to think about.
The last time Chung Eui-yong went to Pyongyang, he went straight to Washington afterwards and he talked to President Trump. And that's when the announcement about the Trump-Kim summit was announced, that Trump had agreed to it. So his visit proved to be a catalyst to all these recent negotiations and the Trump-Kim summit in Singapore in June. How important do you think this latest visit could be towards negotiations between North Korea and the U.S. as well?
I think it's highly possible that Chung Eui-yong will visit Washington, D.C. again after his visit to Pyongyang. But more important thing is what kind of messages North Korea gives to Chung Eui-yong. At least it should be something positive. At least it should be something that makes a denuclearization process of North Korea possible. If there is no intentions of North Korea to begin initial phase of denuclearization, Chung Eui-yong doesn't need to visit Washington, D.C. These kinds of visits without any outcome would endanger the relations between the U.S. and South Korea. So I think, at least some kinds of positive message by Kim Jongun would enable Chung Eui-yong to visit Washington, D.C.
The U.S. in the past have said denuclearization of North Korea remains the priority ahead of anything else. But Chung Eui-yong's visit is not only about the U.S. North Korea relations, it's also about the inter-Korean relations as well, about the possible joint liaison office and about other issues as well that they've talked about. What do you think the U.S. will make about that side of Chung Eui-yong's agenda on this trip?
The basic thing that the U.S. has on South Korea is that, okay, the U.S. definitely supports North-South Korea exchanges, detente and the relationship improvement between two Koreas. But, as you mentioned, the priority on the U.S. side is denuclearizing North Korea. And once the denuclearization issue to be, evolving in parallel with, detente issues between two Koreas, so that the South Korea and the U.S. would be on the same page on North Korea policy issues. The U.S. wants to have South Korea to be on the same policies. If it's sanctions, the U.S. and South Korea has to be on the same sanctions. If it's engagement, U.S. and South Korea has to take the same engagement policy on North Korea. As a big concern the U.S. has is, the bigger concern, I would say, is the weakening of the U.S.-South Korea alliance. I mean, they're also concerned, the U.S. also have some concerns about the denuclearizing North Korea. But bigger concern they have is that because of different postures between U.S. and South Korea on North Korea policies, what if the alliance gets weakened in the future? That's something that China wants to make. If the alliance becomes weakened because of different policies on North Korea, China would be really happy. That's, I think, the biggest concern the U.S. has right now.
Now, seeing as you mentioned China, let's move on to China. So previous reports have said that Chinese President Xi Jinping will be visiting Pyongyang on September 9th, this a few days after Chung Eui-yong's visit. That's before the 70th anniversary of the regime's foundation. Now, it's not been confirmed yet, so we don't know whether it's going to happen. But how do you think that will play on Chung Eui-yong's mind as they're negotiating with North Korea?
I think what China wants right now is to soften the U.S. pressure on China. And that's, I think, the priority it has. If Jong Eui-yong visits, North Korea, I think, if Xi Jinping visits North Korea, I think, China wants to, bolster the relationship between North Korea and China. But also, by doing that, China wants to have the North Korea and the U.S. negotiation frame to, resume in the future, which is very important for China because the North Korea and the U.S. frame is broken. There will be a big, big punch on China. I mean, the U.S. Kind of always think that China has been the, country that has broken the frame between the U.S. and North Korea. So I think, China definitely wants the frame to re-begin. And I think if Xi Jinping visits North Korea, that signifies that North Korea and the U.S., they have, reached an agreement so that they would be able to re-begin their negotiation frame between two countries. So I think that would be a good sign. I mean, Xi Jinping visit to Pyongyang would be a good sign about the current negotiation frame between two countries, the U.S. and North Korea.
And finally, if we go back to the inter-Korean relation issues, so Chung Eui-yong is going, he'll be talking about the Panmunjom declaration, and they said they'll be discussing how they would plan to move forward on that. But what kind of progress do you think they can make on that during this visit? Of course, they will probably arrange the date for the next inter-Korean summit. But what else can they achieve during this visit?
I think that's a very tough one. Maybe they can agree upon what date that the summit will be held. But the agenda itself is very tricky. Now, they have to think about some very tricky issues. For example, establishing a liaison office at Kaesong. That also is something that the U.S. is worrying about because, North-South detente is good, but that should be in parallel with the denuclearization issues. If if Chung Eui-yong visits Pyongyang, I think rather than the date, they also have to think about the agenda of the summit meeting, and also I think that's why it's really important that Chung Eui-yong persuades Kim Jongun so that they would resume the negotiation frame with the United States, because that frame between the U.S. and North Korea would determine how much momentum the summit meeting would have for the further development of other series of events, and especially in September.
Yes, Professor, so Chung Eui-yong's visit will be on Wednesday. We'll be keeping a close eye on that and see what comes out of it. Thank you for coming in today and sharing us your insights.
Thank you.